Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Cohen. My name is Matt Codner, and on behalf of my capstone team and our faculty advisor, Kizzy Charles Guzman, I am pleased to present our plan for achieving net zero site energy in New York City, an implementation roadmap for the Natural Resources Defense Council. In the next 10 minutes, I will provide an overview of our project, methodology, data model, balance, review our recommended solutions, how we recommend to pay for them, and review potential challenges. Why is this project important? In the United States, a vast majority of our electricity is fossil fuel based, and buildings use about half of that energy. While Manhattan is increasingly proactive in energy efficient new construction, a commercial net zero retrofit has never been accomplished here. In the context of this information, NRDC, which is a highly effective environmental group, also a top-rated nonprofit, has asked us to develop a net zero strategy for their facility in Lower Manhattan. The timeline for the plan is 10 years, with a $5 million budget in addition to incentives, reinvestment, and financing. They asked us to favor solutions that are passive in nature and avoid the use of fossil fuels. The focus of our project is the top 7 floors of 40 West 20th Street, which cover just over 62,000 square feet. The New York Public Library owns the bottom 5 floors. NRDC has been proactive over the past few years. They've achieved the world's highest LEED commercial interiors rating for their 8th floor renovation, in addition developing an energy efficient data center, green roof plan, and installing a small solar array on the roof. Despite all of this incredible progress, there still remain great opportunities for improvement. For instance, they have a number 2 oil burning furnace in their basement. It accounts for 1/3 of the energy use in their building and runs entirely on fossil fuels. Given this scope, our first objective was to define net zero. There are several definitions, each with different implications. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory's net zero site energy proved appropriate for our project. This is defined as a building which produces and consumes the same amount of energy on site on an annual basis. NRDC's ability to achieve site net zero is in line with their core environmental purposes, while also proving the concept for an urban retrofit environment would pioneer a net zero retrofit movement for the city. With this definition and purpose in mind, we developed 17 criteria to review the technology by, including the advancement curve of technology over 10 years, finance mechanisms appropriate for tax-exempt organizations, and proven case studies with contextual similarities to this project. Within this framework, we went to work reviewing over 45 technologies, conducting 25 interviews with representatives from NRDC, in addition to architects, designers, engineers, manufacturers, and thought leaders worldwide. We reviewed over 125 case studies, finding ones as applicable to a retrofit urban environment and a similar climate to Manhattan as possible. We organized and vetted the information thoroughly and modeled it from an energy as well as a financial perspective, which I will now show you. Our data model benchmarks 2 years' worth of energy data, models incremental improvements based on our implementation plan, while accounting for relationships between mutual beneficial technologies, weather data, and compares the recommendations with standardized metrics. What you see here is our benchmark. The x-axis shows energy in kilowatt hours annually. The y-axis is years, 2010 through 2022. Assuming that all factors remain the same based off of the 2 years of data that we were provided by the client, with no efficiency or generation improvements and no increased load, based on the data we have, the building consumes 1.2 million kilowatt hours per year and produces about 2,000 kilowatt hours per year via the solar array on the roof. The blue line is consumption. The green line at the very bottom is the 2,000 produced by their current solar capacity. This is the gap that we need to close. Into that benchmark, we analyzed and projected 4 broad categories of solutions. Passive technologies, which maximize thermal efficiency without the use of external power. These include airflow design or insulation. Active efficiency technologies, using pumps, fans, or other equipments to achieve greater efficiency. And metering and behavior, providing enhanced information to occupants to encourage efficient behavior. And generation is the 4th one. Generation, we use methods using only renewable power. The end result is summarized in this graph. Energy, represented again on the y-axis in kilowatt hours per year, and years are on the x-axis, 2010 through 2022. Each technology implementation is shown as a colored bar. Light blue represents a passive technology, while dark blue is an active technology. These are the efficiency improvements. Green is generation. The key takeaway from this slide is that our research shows that this portfolio of solutions on the timeline proposed will reduce NRDC's annual net energy load to 375,000 kilowatt hours per year, represented by the star in the center. Also, we will increase generation to meet that same number around 2021. Energy consumed will match energy produced on site on that year, thus meeting the NREL's definition of site net zero. This diagram provides an overview of some of our solutions from roof to basement. Passive efficiency technologies, including exterior and interior insulation, along with active efficiency improvements, including electrical component replacement, lighting controls, and lighting upgrades, as well as geo-exchange. This is a technology which uses the constant temperature of the Earth to baseline the heating and cooling. This sets the stage for the solar photovoltaics to power the space. The technology we recommend is an emerging technology known as concentrating PV. It magnifies the sun's energy onto the solar panel, providing greater energy with less real estate, quite appropriate for a roof in Manhattan. And then remember that number 2 oil-burning furnace that I mentioned earlier? In the past, it required 4 to 6 tank fill-ups of 2,000 gallons each per year. We found that with the efficiency that we modeled, furnace boiler heat will only be necessary on the absolute coldest days of the year. This means, and if the number of cold days remain more or less the same as they did in the previous 4 years that we modeled, a single tank of fuel could last for several years. We propose replacing that number 2 fossil fuel oil with biofuel derived from waste cooking oil. How much will all this cost? We built a financial model which analyzes the cash flow of each technology and assesses available rebates, reinvestment of cash flows, and simple finance mechanisms for capital-intensive improvements. The end result is, with financing, reinvestment, and incentives, shown by the blue line here, we can keep the project under $3 million. For illustrated purposes, we also provide here an all-in cost without finance, reinvestment, or incentives, which is the red line, and it puts the cumulative project total at around $5.75 million. As with any construction retrofit project estimate, especially in the city of New York that spans 10 years, there are risks that site conditions may differ from the information analyzed. We used only the most conservative data in our model, but there still remains risk that technology may develop at a different rate from available projections. Additionally, things like permits and zoning and the laws that govern them can change over the 10-year horizon, affecting the implementation. Additionally, labor and material rates are subject to change, in addition to rebates and incentive rates. In conclusion, our recommendations and extensive research and modeling show that through retrofit, NRDC can achieve site net zero in under 10 years for a net cost of under $5 million at the Manhattan headquarters. Targeting net zero using this plan will further NRDC's reputation as a global pioneer in urban energy efficiency, improving on their already exemplary reputation as a leading environmental advocacy organization. The solutions presented on this roadmap show that net zero is achievable, not only in new construction and non-urban environments, but also in the highest density urban settings. When fully implemented, this proof of concept could serve as the catalyst for other site net zero retrofits across New York City and in similar urban environments. As such, NRDC can set an example leading to substantial reduction of fossil fuel consumption well beyond 40 West 20th Street. Thank you. I invite your questions. Oh, go ahead.
Hi. On slide 12, you assume, I guess, that the energy efficiencies are additive, but as you add new energy efficiency measures, why don't you assume that there's a diminishing return?
Like I mentioned before, the model takes into effect mutually supporting technologies. So for instance, we looked at two different installation techniques, which if you simply added them up as cumulative, the math wouldn't work out. But our model takes those into consideration, and we do take into effect diminishing returns, but it's well into the spreadsheet in order to really show you those details. And I'd be happy to show them to you if you'd like to see them.
Thank you.
Hello. Were you guys able to talk to anyone from the New York City Department of Buildings to see if you guys were possibly violating anything? I mean, there seems to be a lot of new technology involved.
We reviewed all of the pertinent permits and information. We are not violating any laws. I think you know Code Green. The Code Green laws went into effect in May of 2012, which allow for permitting of certain technologies, including the exterior insulation coming over the easement line. So there's a number of, yes, we did review all of the pertinent information with regard to city planning. Yes.
This sounds like a great presentation, a lot of technologies used in there. Were there any technologies that you considered and finally rejected?
Tons. I think about half of them made it into the actual recommendation. But in our appendix of the report, which will be available online in about a week, there's a number of technologies that just simply couldn't make it out because they were outcompeted by other technologies. Some of these included wind turbines, exercise bikes that generate electricity. There was a number of innovative and cutting-edge things that we looked at but didn't make it into the final recommendation. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next project blends urban ecology and business strategy. It's a business plan for the Healthy Urban Tree Initiative in New York City. The client was the Nature Conservancy, and the faculty advisor was Dr. Bob Cook. I'd like to ask Davida to come up.
Okay, good evening, everybody. So as George just told you all, my name's Erin McNally, and tonight I'll be presenting on behalf of my group our project that we completed this semester for our capstone. Hurricane Sandy has driven home the pertinence of our capstone project more than any of us wanted by demonstrating that our desire for economic growth is often at odds with natural hazards. Our clients, the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Environmental Protection Agency, asked us to investigate this issue. So throughout this semester, we've been asking ourselves, how can we create resilient, sustainable communities that allow us to develop economically while also accounting for the risk of natural hazards? Tonight, I'll walk you through a little bit more about this problem, the solution that our clients asked us to work through, how sustainability can be used as a tool for integration, and the recommendations for our clients. So how does this problem arise? We've been looking at two different types of plans throughout the semester. On the one hand, we've been looking at land use plans that are typically geared towards short-term economic growth. On the other hand, we've also been looking at hazard mitigation plans, which seek to reduce a community's long-term exposure to natural disasters such as flooding. Ideally, these plans would reconcile the short and long-term needs of communities. But as it turns out, there is often little or no coordination between those who plan for hazards and those who work on land use. As a result, communities might develop in a floodplain with their eyes set on the goal of short-term economic growth. But if this development does not take into account the risk of flooding, the potential for long-term economic growth is threatened. Sustainability can bridge the gap between hazard mitigation and local land use planning. As I'll explain, sustainability can help a community meet its economic development goals and deal with hazards. The goal is not necessarily to relocate outside of a floodplain, but to promote the sustainable development of a resilient community within the floodplain in a way that can reduce the damage from flooding. This approach decreases the community's physical and economic vulnerability, increases resilience, and improves overall environmental performance. Our clients, FEMA and the EPA, recognize the benefits of integrating land use planning and hazard mitigation. Our clients asked us to focus on Syracuse, New York, and surrounding Onondaga County that had to agree to participate in a federal pilot project on hazard mitigation and land use. Our clients asked us to do three things. The first thing they wanted us to do was to develop a methodology that any municipality across the United States could use if they wanted to account for hazards in their land use decisions. In order to develop this methodology, our clients asked us to look at Syracuse and Onondaga County to see if and how the local land use plans overlooked or conflicted with the findings of the county's hazard mitigation plan. The third and final component of our project was the development of a sustainability strategies resource guide that could be used by flood-prone communities to reconcile conflicts between hazard mitigation and land use. Our methodology has a few steps, starting with identifying hazards and ending with integrating hazard mitigation through sustainability. As an example of our methodology in action, I'm going to walk you through an analysis of Syracuse to give you a sense of the process that a local land use planner would take to incorporate hazard risks and hazard mitigation measures into sustainable land use decisions. Hazard mitigation plans assess the risk posed by a large number of natural hazards, ranging from tornadoes to flooding. If you want to integrate hazard mitigation into your land use decisions, it is first important for land use planners to determine which hazards pose the greatest risk for their area. In the area that we analyzed, riverine flooding poses the greatest risk to land use. So our analysis focused on the 100-year floodplain. We also decided to focus specifically on Syracuse because that's where there is the highest density of both people and buildings within the county. According to the Hazard Mitigation Plan, the estimated cost of building replacement following a 100-year flood event in Syracuse is $167 million, or a quarter of the city's annual budget. Now that we understand the risks for the city, we wanted to understand what the land use plans say about development that's occurring within the floodplain. And we found that the city wants to revitalize its downtown with redevelopment and new development along an area called the Creek Walk. Both the county and the city see the Creek Walk as a vibrant mixed-use economic destination. But as you can see on the map, this development falls directly within the floodplain. The problem is the lack of coordination at the local level. None of the flood risk information in the city's hazard mitigation plan is included in their land use plans. And as a result, the land use plans offer no strategies or guidelines for developing the Creek Walk in a truly sustainable way. There are some sustainability strategies that are included in the development plans for the Creek Walk. These strategies are primarily green infrastructure strategies, but these strategies are only mentioned as measures to improve water quality, and there's no mention of the additional benefit that green infrastructure strategies can provide for flood mitigation. This is a demonstration of what a building along the Creek Walk might look like if its development was guided by land use plans that address the risk of flooding. The design of this hypothetical mixed-use building incorporates sustainability strategies that we have pulled from the resource guide that we developed for our clients. Some of these strategies include green infrastructure, such as swales and pervious pavement. In our scenario, an engineering study would be conducted to determine the appropriate scale and placement of such strategies so that they provide not only benefits for water quality improvement, but also flood mitigation. There are also a number of strategies that can be used on the interior of your building, such as water-resistant interior finishes, and locating all gas lines, electrical, and mechanical equipment above the 100-year flood levels. Keep in mind that a resilient building is one that is better able to adapt and respond to flooding than a conventional building, but using these strategies is by no means a guarantee that the building won't flood or that flooding won't cause damage. Our resource guide also includes policy strategies and financial resources. An example of a policy that can be used to reduce the impacts of flooding is a reservoir drawdown, by which, in anticipation of a storm, you can reduce the water level in the reservoir so it can act as a sort of bathtub to hold stormwater. In terms of financial resources, funding for the implementation of sustainability strategies comes largely from federal grant programs that support a number of strategies, including dense development with access to public transportation. Based on our analysis, we have come up with a number of recommendations for our clients. First and foremost, we think that our clients really need to encourage local communities to plan and prepare for disasters before they happen. There is also a strong need for plans to reference one another. Otherwise, there is little chance that local government will coordinate and integrate the plans. Both hazard mitigation plans and land use plans should include language that link sustainability, hazard mitigation, and land use. And finally, what we really want is for those who work on land use and those who work on hazard mitigation to talk to each other and collaborate on solutions. FEMA and the EPA can facilitate this by setting up regional or hazard-specific educational workshops that focus on how to use sustainability as a tool to integrate hazard mitigation and land use planning. Our hope is that our work over this semester will provide our clients with a starting point for a much larger effort that will eventually result in resilient, sustainable communities across the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a brilliant presentation. In the arena of creek flooding, You were addressing, it seemed like mostly what was happening within Syracuse itself. What about the upstream communities and the need for Syracuse to work in concert with upstream communities to develop comprehensive plans that would work with those? Did you have an opportunity to delve into that at all?
We didn't go too much into detail about that. We do recognize that it's an issue, so throughout our work and our interactions with our clients, we've highlighted the need for there to be coordination across all levels of government, which is what made our project really interesting, because we worked with federal government, FEMA, and the EPA, and we were also speaking with planners from both the county and the city, and we looked at plans, comprehensive plans and sustainable development plans from the county and the city.
Hello.
Hello.
Just curious, did you guys look at the financial implications of your recommendations for your clients and try to figure out where that funding would be coming from?
Right, so we didn't actually go into that much detail about the financials of everything. We were tasked more with developing a methodology, which does include, as land use planners go through, we've suggested that they conduct a cost-benefit analysis to determine which strategies are most beneficial or make most sense for them. But we didn't specifically do any financial analyses ourselves.
Thank you, and wonderful presentation. My question is, will your sustainability resources guide be available to everyone, or how is that going to be rolled out?
Yes, that's the idea, and we haven't had our final meeting with our clients yet, but the idea was that the methodology that we've developed can be used by land use planners in tandem with the Sustainability Strategies Resource Guide, so while they're going through the steps that we've suggested, they can also look towards our Sustainability Resource Guide to see what kind of strategies they can think about using and determine what's best for them and most economically and socially beneficial.
Okay, so this is the part of the agenda where I give my closing remarks. I'd like to say that over the last couple of hours, we've seen, I think, 5 really strong presentations about 5 very good projects. Before I let you go, I'd like to recognize my colleagues in the program who worked with these students throughout this semester. So Kizzy Charles Guzman, Suzanne DeRoche, Louise Rosen, and Bob Cook. The jargon for what we did tonight is proof of concept. And I think we proved a couple of things. One is that the capstone is a really powerful learning experience for the students. And all of you who are graduating from the Sustainability Management Program are well prepared to take on these really complex, difficult issues in the real world. With that, I'd like to ask you all to give a round of applause to yourselves for all this hard work. Congratulations.